Hello, hello, welcome one, welcome all. We've had some pound for pound top heavy hitters in action this week and weekend already. So we thought we would bring out the pound for pound top gun at seconds out, that being Josh Hart. He wears his heart on his sleeve and on his hoodie as well, too, with a Phil Foden haircut, looking good.
Oh,
Two
man.
bunch of likely lads here giving you all the entertainment and chopping up some of the weekend and week's action already. If you haven't already, make sure to get your comments in the chat. We'll be answering our best to all of them, aiding into the discussion that we'll be having here today. So get those chats and comments in, click the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and also make sure that you follow us on social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can also listen to this on Spotify as well too. I'm with, as I mentioned here, Josh Hart. Josh, good to see you. How's life?
Very good, Ayman. Good to see you as well. Had a nice, enjoyable bank holiday weekend. Just chilling out, enjoying the sunshine. And overall, I'm very, very good. How about yourself?
Yeah, all good to see you. Well, I'm sure His Flexcellency is having maybe a better day away. We'll give him the grace today. They can enjoy a bit of the sunshine. We all know he needs a little bit, but as well, clear the mind, clear the legs, stretch the legs out as well too. Is His Flexcellency. But we've had some, like I mentioned before, some heavy hitters in the boxing game out in the ring. And first of all, starting off with Canelo Alvarez. Now, it was a little bit of a point of contention about the fights and the fights that could be on the table for Canelo Alvarez, with the likes of David Benavidez maybe being the one that fans wanted to see in the ring with him this weekend. But we still got a good fighting prospect against Jaime Munguia, and there was a lot of back and forth in the build-up as well too. There was nearly a fight between Canelo and his one-time promoter Oscar De La Hoya, helping to build up some of the tension leading into the fight night. But the fight, I think, was a good fight. To be fair, it maybe didn't. Well, it probably definitely didn't go down as one of those all-time Mexican wars that we've had in the past. We probably won't put it up in there, as time goes past. But it was still a good, enjoyable fight with some great moments in there. It told us a lot about Canelo and told us a lot about Munguia, but more so about Canelo, who's held onto for a lot of people that mantle of number one pound for pound fighter in all of boxing. But first of all, Josh, let me get your take on the fight. What did you think of Canelo remaining undisputed against Jaime Munguia?
I thought overall it was a solid display from Canelo. It's just routine for him now. We were just discussing off camera the last time we've seen Canelo actually stop someone, and that's been a while now. But every time he's been getting in there since, he has just been putting on the same type of just not brutal beatdowns, but it's what he does. It's his style. He'll just beat you up, smack the arm, smack anything that's not gonna benefit the opponent. Really, he just beats them up. He looked good. He looked strong. Um, Looked a little bit more static than what he normally does, but that just could be, obviously, you got to remember he's had a very extensive career, turning pro at 15 years old. But overall, I thought it was just a routine, standard, solid display from Canelo.
Yeah, I thought the same too. I thought that Canelo is probably a little bit more static than he has been in the past. But I think for someone who, when he was coming up and he was on the rise, and whilst he was established as one of the best fighters, there was always that question mark about Canelo and stretching out his activity over the 12 rounds. I think he's mastered his ability to be able to throw and be effective throughout the 12. But that's meant also within, whilst he's, slightly, well, as he's got older, that he has to kind of cut down a little bit on the activity and pick his spots a little bit more. And he still picks those spots greatly. He still picks those moments. Maybe he's a little more easier to hit than he was before in the past. Not really, exhibiting that head movement that he did in the past as well too. Some of those fights and some of those defensive skills that he had on display were brilliant back in 5, 6, 7 years ago, but they're not there anymore, and that's a danger for Canelo Alvarez, as Munguia was one of those young, hungry fighters coming up, looking to maybe be one of this passing of the torch in the way that you can either pass the torch by beating Canelo, or you can pass the torch in the way that Canelo fought Mayweather. And although he didn't really have much of an effect on the fight, although I think did one judge have it for Canelo in that fight? I can't remember what it was. Either way, it was a bit of a crazy situation. I think it was in that fight. But it might be a passing the torch in that sort of sense, and Munguia can grow into the role like Canelo grew into that role after Mayweather exited the ring. We'll have to wait and see for that for Jaime Munguia. But for Canelo, for me, with the likes of Belanga, with the likes of Benavidez more specifically, or Crawford in the future, this decline, would you put him as the favorite in any of the three of those fights? Probably Berlanga, but what about the other two, Josh?
I think Benavidez, I would still ever so slightly favour Canelo. Ever so slightly, though. Like, it would be a very, very close fight. But then for Crawford, for me, I'd make Crawford the favourite for that fight. Again, I know Crawford's not necessarily being active, but he came into that fight with Errol Spence and put on one of the biggest beatdowns we've ever seen in a fight that we expected to be so close. He made it look easy. And I do feel, like we said, the decline of Canelo. He's aging. He's getting a little bit older now. Like we said, he's a little bit easier to hit. I do feel that Crawford would edge him as a favourite. And then I still feel he'd be the favourite against Benavidez, though. But I still think I think that's the next fight we have to make, if I'm being honest, Canelo Benavidez. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens, really. That's all I can really say.
Fair enough. We'll get to some of the people in the chat who put their comments as well, too, having their say in the chat. We have Grumpy Grey Farmer. King Canelo is the best out there, still putting him as his number one in the pound for pound. Ramoni Mode XD. Good to see you there. Hello. Hello, back to you too. Danny not here, eh? Well, maybe he'll be here next week and you can give him what for next weekend, or week, sorry. On Monday. DJ Frisky D. Canelo is finished. I think he's far from finished. Maybe at the top level, you might have a claim to him being, maybe not as successful as he was in the future, but competitive definitely still. With the likes of mandatories like Berlanga in the way, you still put him, and it depends what level you look at the Berlanga fight. I think Berlanga might not be top level just yet, but might prove to be in the future, although there's a lot left to be desired from his displays in some of those fights on the way up. But that might be one of those. Crawford's competitive fight because of the size difference, and Crawford is no spring chicken either. Benavidez as well too. Well, depends what weight it's at, and depends what clauses are put in the background of that fight if it gets made, unless a flat fee, as I'll mention in a moment, is agreed or is received by Saul Canelo Alvarez, as he's been demanding for that fight to go ahead. Romani Mode XD again. Canelo performed well. How was he finished? Maybe not his absolute peak, but still great. I think that's a good way to put it. Dylan Tring, buzzcut boy. I think that one's for you, Josh. He looks looking good with a buzzcut. Munguia was a top contender. I agree. Although I think Munguia has kind of flattered to deceive as to what he really and truly is. I think the Derevyanchenko fight showed a lot of where Munguia really actually is. And now that he's had the Canelo fight, I wonder, will the Canelo pay as well to how much desire is left in Munguia to really get to the top of the sport? That's another factor for Munguia here as to whether, that fire is still in him after he's had what could be the greatest night in his career, or the greatest spectacle in his career. So that's another hurdle that he'll have to climb over if he wants to prove that. Ultra 505 Canelo versus the mighty Jake Paul Stranger. Things that happened. Jake Paul was saying that he wants to get a belt at cruiserweight, and then Canelo will be more inclined to fight him. I think that's not a bad shout, to be fair, if Jake Paul can maneuver himself in that position. You just know that when, Tommy Fury and Jake Paul were announced to fight, the WBC were going to give a high ranking to the winner. And if it was Jake Paul, they would have definitely maneuvered him into that high ranking. Maybe tried to put him in front of a very, very now labored looking Makabu. You'd still favor Makabu, though, strongly in that fight, but something could be going on if they ever met in the ring. But Jake's got other problems right now in the form of Mike Tyson. Didn't think I'd be saying that in 2024. We've got problems as well in boxing because Jake Paul is taking on Mike Tyson too. JTH is built like Canelo. Canelo's pinky, that is.
Wow.
Don't know.
Wow.
I've seen you in the ring, Josh. You're pretty handy yourself.
Yeah. I don't know how to feel about the abuse there. Don't really know how to feel about that. Being told I'm built like Canelo's pinky. Who's got the time to even analyse Canelo's pinky? I don't know. I think that shows whoever said that probably needs to find a hobby or something. But I can handle myself in the ring. Probably not as well as Canelo, but I can get through 3 rounds and then I'm finished. And then throw the towel in.
Another day for you in the ring in the future, I'm sure. Moving forward, Lewis Hart says, Al Ayman, good to see you, Lewis, in here. Thank you for contributing. Good guy is Lewis, up and coming reporter in the scene. Not, what did I call you? What was it? Club fighter, club reporter. Definitely not. Cub reporter, as Danny Flexen once said. What is blood yapping about? You got a yap in here as well in the chat, Cameron. If you're going to say that, drop some comments in about the boxing as well too. Grumpy Grey Farmer comes back and says there's only one fight ever everyone wants to see now, maybe two with Bivol. Bivol add to the list as well. Crawford beats Canelo. How? He's never fought at 168 and is 36-37. Guess we'll have to see after the Majorov fight. Agree with you as well too. Canelo beats Crawford easy, says Grumpy Grey Farmer. And there are some of the options there, Josh. You alluded to wanting to see Benavidez, I think, but let's just shortlist this again. Berlanga, Benavidez, Crawford, the Bivol rematch. Benavidez is the one that stands out as the favourite to you.
Yes, 100%. I feel like it's just two very, very elite fighters at 168. I think Benavidez is just crying out for the opportunity. You can see how many people want that fight. When I spoke to Sam Jones and Andy Clark yesterday, I said, if you're to look at the next fight for Canelo, who do you want to see him fight? Before I even got to finish the question with Sam Jones, he said David Benavidez is the only fight I care about. I could have asked her about the Bivol fight, fighting Crawford, Berlanga, any other names. All we want as boxing fans is Canelo versus David Benavidez. And with some of the influence in boxing now from Turki Al-Sheikh, these types of fights can actually get made now. So fingers crossed we get to see that fight. Because for me, that's the biggest fight at 168. I think it's the best fight. I think it's the fight that probably will get most people intrigued about it.
Yeah, so jumping through some of these options and get your thoughts in the chat as well too. I'll read them out as to the fight that you want to see, but just listen to this all again, just brief notes. Berlanga maybe wants to touch that next generation again and take on Berlanga. You probably favour him, Canelo that being, as the favourite in the fight against Berlanga, who's shown some patchy points in some of the fights that he's had on the way up. One most notably to Marco Esteban Caceres. I remember that being a bit of adversity for Berlanga as he looked to get to the position that he's in now. Dmitry Bivol could be the undisputed light heavyweight champion. It won't be on June 1st because that fight has fallen for the wayside for now. We'll discuss that later and the ramifications of it. But a rematch with Bivol is something that's been in Canelo's mind to some degree, at least not in the immediacy as he's gone through defending and such for now. But that might be something that you want to revisit with the fights and the scorecards being close, even though for a lot of boxing fans, the fight wasn't close. They were for judges, and things can be swayed in different ways if you're able to adjust, and maybe Canelo might eke out a victory the second time round. Again, if he's got the undisputed titles and the division, that might be one where Canelo really looks to roll the dice and claim undisputed light heavyweight. What a way to set out in the sun for Canelo, if that might be the opportunity there for him. Benavidez, look, Canelo's been very clear about things. I think words might have been twisted, but if I remember it correctly, he kind of said, "Look, I'm the guy at the top, so I get to call the shots, and maybe if the shots are for me that I want to implement some form of hydration clause in, then I should be able to." That would obviously lean itself more so in Canelo's favor if he was able to cap out Benavidez, who looks like he really kind of hydrates to can't even fathom what he gets to, but he looks like a big fighter on the night, just like Zoda Ramirez as well too, and is able to kind of put those advantages in the ring and the successes that he has had so far. He's had some good wins as well too against Andrade and Plant when there's been questions as to some of these fighters as who they fight to get the Canelo sweepstakes payday in the form of the Mayweather sweepstakes as back in the day. Benavidez has really proven himself and having some of the fights against the top competitors in and around the division. But Benavidez to me just looks a bit too young, a bit too active, a bit too fresh, a bit too active in the ring and the amount he throws, a bit too aggressive right now for really an aging Canelo who looked small for me as well against Munguia too. Like he was just going to look, it will be similar to how Bivol just looked like he towered and was thicker against Canelo. I don't think Canelo would like to go out really on a knee or having been stopped in any sort of way. I think Canelo's pride is to not be knocked down, not be stopped as well, too, as he looks to end the chapter of his career as we look towards his inevitable retirement in the future. The other last one as well, too, is Crawford. And you mentioned there before, Josh, about Turki Al-Sheikh and his involvement, and that involvement has now bled out to we've got the card coming up now in America promoting Riyadh season, and there's a card coming up in the UK. We believed, at least that's believed to be the case, coming up in September. Another form with a 5v5. But the point is that he's now working with people like Terence Crawford, and the rumors and whispers and things that have been talked about in the past as well is the potential at what weight could Canelo and Crawford fight each other, find themselves in the ring at. And I think that might be the way that they look to go to if it looks like Crawford can carry out through the weights as well too against Madrimov, who's no easy fight as well. So I think Crawford will have to come through that and maybe have, climb up those weights and set really it's kind of in I don't know actually. I was going to say it's in Crawford's favor. It's in Crawford's favor in a sense because Crawford doesn't look like he's missed any steps. You can't really say that about Crawford, whereas Canelo looks like he's taken those small steps backwards. I will admit, like, I'm a little bit of a to be fair, I think I probably had a bit of the rose tinted shades on here, but sometimes I might not be the best guise of who's declining or not. I think I see it more so in Canelo than I did see it in Golovkin. People were telling me that Golovkin was on the slide in his last few fights, and I was like, nah, that's just Golovkin, maybe underestimating his opponent a little bit and fighting down to the level. People said it in Jeremeta. People said it in other fights, I just couldn't quite see it. But then I completely saw it in his third fight with Canelo, and I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time for Golovkin to hang his gloves up. But with Canelo and Crawford, you just don't see Crawford really taking that backward step right now in terms of, his abilities, whereas Canelo is right now. So you might end up favoring by the time it comes out if Crawford looks to have those fights when he looks to settle at the weight. Who's going to be what state is Canelo going to be in? But when that time comes, but I feel like that's a fight that they want to have in Saudi Arabia and can possibly make in the future. We'll jump to some of the guys in the chat and see what they say about what they want. As Cameron Hopewell says, we've been yapping on about. So we have here, we ended off with Canelo beats Crawford easy. Canelo, James Maloney says, Canelo, sorry, is not finished. None of them will beat him. He's so strong, and what a chin. Don't even say Jake Paul. We need Crawford, and Canelo will beat him on points. Nathan reports, have you got a Pablo in your top lip, Josh, mate? I don't know what that means.
I've got absolutely no idea what I don't. Why is it after these comments that get thrown at me? Like, you get asked the genuine boxing questions, and I just get random stick thrown at me. I just get all sorts thrown at me. I'm not enjoying this. I'm just these comments directed at me are just not nice.
Am I dead yet? It says you can have this one, Josh. Bivol rematch, or is Bivol just too big?
Ooh, I think Bivol's just a little bit too big for Canelo. Again, referencing back to the interviews I did yesterday, especially with Andy Clark, we discussed if we were going to see a Canelo Bivol rematch, who would we favour? And he said he favours Bivol. He thinks it would be the exact same outcome. And if I'm being honest, I have to completely agree with that. I can't really see anything, especially if we're talking about this Canelo decline not looking as slick, as sharp, as fresh as what he has in the past. I don't think that will help him at all. Trying to beat an operator like Dmitry Bivol, who's just on it at all times. He'll keep himself moving. A very active fighter, and I just think that's an absolute stylistically. I think it's a nightmare for Canelo to face right now.
Here we go. We can share in some of the slander here to DB Cooper 1. Good to see you in here, DB Cooper 1. Not to be confused with DB Cooper 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and all the way forward. Afternoon T-Boy and B-Tech Al Heyman. You got rid of the Eddie Hearn book, Joshy. We leave the retort back for a moment and move forward. Ramoni mode XD. Bivol will outpoint him again. Too big and too much stamina for a Canelo who doesn't throw as much past round 6 anymore. Adding to that as well, too. Oh, the message is just gone there. But adding to that, too, he says, I also think Golovkin beat Canelo twice. I completely agree with you. I believe that Golovkin did beat Canelo twice as well, too. Third fight, it was sad to see from a Golovkin fan point of view. Only way Canelo beat him was when he was 40 in the trilogy, lol. My thoughts completely. I couldn't have summed it up any more. We'll move on forward as we've discussed the fight and discussed the options on the table for Canelo, and we'll move forward to a blockbuster Monday. Good to have fights on at Sky Sports on a midday where you can enjoy your lunch and we don't have to wait up until the early hours in the morning to enjoy some of the fights. I think it was flip round the other way when you're over in America. It's just good to see them have to wake up and see one of the pound for pound greats, or stay up to see one of the pound for pound greats. And it was the form of Naoya Inoue defeating Luis Nery, but he had to climb up off the canvas to do it. Luis Nery, who sort of administered some social justice in a way with him and his past. So in a way was the man to the Judge Dredd, I guess, as it was, to deliver that. But it nearly for a moment seemed that was all going to go up in smoke in a stadium where things like that have happened in the past.
Yeah. Anyway, he just looked so good in there, didn't he? He went in. Well, no, he didn't start off good, did he? He went in, looked a little bit off, got caught, and at that point, I think that's when the whole boxing world just went a little bit. It went into a little bit of a meltdown almost. We kind of thought we were about to see the monster actually look human, but he just recovered. He recovered well. Dropped him straight away. Well, not straight away, but dropped him in the round after in the second. And then from there, it was kind of like, right, Inoue's back in it now. And I feel like all the doubts that we did or were starting to have, I feel like they were erased very quickly. And what was another successful night for Inoue. Didn't see the history repeat in the Tokyo Dome where Mike Tyson got famously knocked out by James Douglas. But no, just what he's such an incredible fighter, man. He's such an incredible fighter. I don't really think there's anyone around it, any weight is above or below, that can stop him. He's fought the best, and every single time he just seems to keep going on and on this incredible run.
Oh, there's a bold claim there in there. Josh was saying that some of the fighters in the weights above might not be able to beat him. We'll discuss some of the featherweights and we'll get your thoughts and people in the chat as well too, as to who might be a good, credible opponent for him. Maybe Sam Goodman, who's waiting in line. He had the opportunity to say, "Look, either fight me or vacate the belts." Maybe he's kind of wishing that he does vacate the belts and looks to climb up the divisions. But yeah, it was a very exciting fight. It was very much one of those moments there where I think Inoue was a little bit caught on the hop there. Not quite as big of a, although it kind of looked a little bit comical. And you would have thought with a fall like that and the way he was kind of open for the shot, it might have been more of a damaging shot. But Inoue seemed to have his, I think, if it sort of kind of grazed the face almost. If Nery, sorry, had caught him a bit more flush, had Inoue been in more danger, probably another hypothetical situation that can be discussed in the future. But yeah, Inoue did have his feet around him, it seemed. I was looking at that while it happened. Inoue did seem composed, and Inoue was able to see and navigate out the round too, and get his own back as well. That composure of Inoue is one of those kind of key features, I think, which is kind of goes under the radar, with his punch power being one of the main things that people have discussed about him, as well as his boxing pedigree. Just being composed in there, knowing when to strike and when to really kind of go for it, when to realize that he's got himself in a position to have been recovered from that shot from Nero was really enjoyable to see, and he was able to dispatch of Luis Nery with some more knockdowns on the way to a round 6 finish. It was a brutal finish as well too from Naoya Inoue. And it was just great to see him again out in action too. A lot of people when I say a lot of people, I want to retract that a little bit and say some Americans want to see him do it over in America. I don't think the Goodman fight, if it is to be Goodman, will happen over in America. That's most likely to happen over in Japan or Australia. Not sure about Goodman really as being the fighter to maybe contest with. In a way, he's a good, solid fighter. I don't think the resume is quite there yet. Although I was surprised that he did beat Race Aleem. I've probably favored Aleem in that fight. Aleem was one of those where I remember when he was on the come up on some of the cards. I've forgotten the fighter's name. It's just jumped out of my head. That's quite annoying when that happens, but just jumped out of my head. He changes his hair color to represent a charity. Every one of his fights had blue hair and gold hair. It's jumped out of my mind. It will come back to me later on. But he was on one of those cards, and he looked raw, but he looked rugged and looked for a fight. Did Ray Salim back in the day, but he never really pushed on, I think, and that he was kind of shown wanting against Goodman. But that's probably maybe his best win going forward, and then into an Inoue fight. I wouldn't look to him as being the fighter that could maybe dethrone Naoya Inoue, but maybe a fighter up above might be able to do that. We'll discuss some of the options in a second. I'll come to the people in the chat first. We've got here saying that TBK1, the Yanks pretend Bivol doesn't exist when discussing Canelo. I'm sure some of the Canelo team do that as well too. James Maloney, you're right, Foden. Bivol is too big unless he comes down. Hey, Foden isn't too bad of a comparison, Josh. In a way, getting dropped so heavy at such a low weight class shows me he definitely can't move up to 135. Gervonta would end him. That's a fantasy fight people have been building towards. And I have to give the credit where it's due as well. In the boxing news interview, I'm pretty sure he said he wouldn't want to take on Inoue. He doesn't think and factor into his mind about a possibility of fighting Inoue. I think the respect is there from Gervonta's side that he probably doesn't want to face one of his idols, or at least a fighter he respects greatly. But would be an interesting fight nonetheless if it could happen. I don't think he should consider it, like he's been saying before. Brett Stan Evangelista Jimentera. Good to see you on here. Great new name in here. So hopefully you're in here every week. Anyway, got his first knockdown of his career. Yeah, it was a shocking moment completely. One of those moments where you think a fight's going to go one way, but then you have those, well, his brother as well too. A bit of synchronicity earlier as well. Takuma, in a way, also befell the same thing as well. Maybe they just wanted to match their careers up there. King David's return. Good to see you in here. King David's return. You mean who we should have fought as is mandatory? Not sure what you're discussing there. In a way, simply different gravy. Could do with more of these bank holiday 1 p.m. shows. I agree with you. Would love to see him step up to 135 in the end and see how he does. Hello, lads. Is it fair to say that Canelo's had? I'm going to move on from that one. Any weight can't stop him. You said how? How we got dropped by a small guy. Josh, imagine how hard you get curved by higher weight punches. We'll put some of the names to Josh in a second. Don't worry. We won't do them over, though. Get anyway over here at the Telford International Arena against Liam Davis, a fighter on the rise. Liam Davis has said as well, too, that he probably wouldn't want to face Inoue just yet. He knows how great of a task it would be. But think about the Liam Davis fight there. Josh will come to you in a second. Josh finally Jivan Daliwal. Josh finally sorted the trim out. Looks fire.
Yeah.
Emojis in the chat for Josh.
Finally getting some nice comments about the haircut. Buzzing. Finally. it's only took 2 lives to do it. Buzzing.
Inoue versus Brandon Figueroa. JTH fan club. Josh 6-degree hairline.
Okay.
Josh get them 90-degree corners. No capo. I know Japanese and have watched his Japanese interview, and he says in them he thinks he may not be able to perform well at 135. There you go.
That's interesting.
Now, seriously, Josh Howard, in a way, do it at 140, and he is ideal at his current weight. So let's start with Josh. You said here, in a way, will potentially clean up a higher weight. Starting off with one of our leading lights here. What about Liam Davis and in a way at Telford Fantasy Fight or at Tokyo, whichever one, the glitz and the glamour of Telford or Tokyo? Don't fancy Liam Davis's chances against Naoya Inoue?
I mean, first of all, when we're talking about the location of the fight, would you rather sell it to a beautiful big 55,000-seater arena in Tokyo? Or would you rather have a lovely, beautiful fight week in the middle of November in Telford? Just think about it. In a 5,000-seat arena as well, 50,000 less people, probably not as busy. No, but actually talking about the fight now, not the location. Do you know what? British bias is going to kick in heavily here. It's going to. But I do kind of fancy Liam Davies' chances. I'm not saying he's the favourite by any means, and I'm not saying he beats him by any means. But I think people would definitely sleep on Liam Davies a lot more than what they would. But I think Liam Davies is going from strength to strength every single fight we've seen him in, especially when you look at the Baluta fight. Then you look at the Cunningham fight where he stops it in the first round. Then you look at the Lafamina fight in Manchester last year where he put Lafamina down, then got knocked down and then stopped him. Then obviously his most recent fight against Robles, who gave Lee McGregor a tough night, and when he beat him in Edinburgh, and Liam just obliterated him in 2. I might actually sound like Frank Warren right now talking about Liam Davies, but I do fancy his chances. However, I think Inoue is probably still a little bit too strong, probably way too quick. But I would definitely love to see the fight. I'd love to see a Brit get the opportunity, bring it Telford, and I think it breaks records.
Okay, let me throw some Brit names at you, Josh, and you can just pick between the two as to tell me who you think would win. So let's start with Inoue versus Nick Ball.
Anyway,
Knockout.
do I need to explain my
You can give
reasoning?
me you can give me a sentence on it.
Okay, I think no. See, it's two very opposite styles. You've got Inoue, a slick start, and then you've got Nick Ball, who's a literal wrecking ball. That'd be a really tough one. I think Inoue catches him at a random. I don't see Inoue being able to put a beat down on him like what he's done with these guys, because I feel like Nick Ball would be the one forcing that. But I feel at the same time Inoue could stick and do some back foot boxing and either tire out Nick Ball, which is probably an impossible task to do. That man's gas tank is incredible. But yeah, no, I think Inoue would probably stop him very late on or get him on points. That's how I would see it.
Inoue versus Isaac Lowe.
Do I really need to answer that? Isaac Lowe via first round knockout. There we go. Answer locked in.
There you go. Indeed. I think I would probably disagree with you feeling that Inoue probably have the run of the mill at the higher weights here. I think there's some very good fighters here at feather. The likes of Brandon Figueroa, the amount of the volume that Brandon Figueroa has. I remember the Fulton fights, and he hurt Fulton. Fulton was just able to, with his boxing skills. I know that Inoue's got incredible boxing skill as well too, but for those moments in the fight, like it could have easily, the sliding doors moments in that fight with Fulton, it could have easily gone the other way, and it could have been Brandon Figueroa having that opportunity to take on Inoue, and he still might, but Figueroa, that taller fighter, it's just aggression. Not afraid to go in close with you, just hunt you down, that type of pressure. I think it would probably be too much for Inoue right now. And as I think Romani Mode XD said in the chat there, just that small little bit of that little break in that invincible looking armor now has been shown. And that kind of adds to the conversation about the other side of it, the possibility of Inoue losing. And I think that might be a step too far for Inoue. The same with Luis Alberto Lopez. I think he's a very good fighter, and I think Inoue will struggle. Vargas, I'd probably favor Inoue. Rafael Espinoza was in a brilliant fight against it's jumped out of my mind now completely. But it was a good fight nonetheless, where Rafael Espinoza upset the odds and beat his opponent in his last fight. And I don't think Inoue would want any kind of business with Ramirez. It was, as I just checked the records there to remind myself, I don't think Inoue would want to go near that right now. With that ding dong that it was Rebeza Ramirez in the past. So I think probably with also Sam Goodman being in the ring there, that's probably a sign of the direction that they're going. I think they're going to stay at the weight there. Just jump into people in the chat and see what they say as well too. We have here Inoue versus Brandon Figueroa, who had that one. Ayman with the laughing emojis. Yes, I was right not to read that one out. Red Black Titchy. Usyk jumped much bigger on weight than Inoue and Crawford together. Usyk pound for pound. He'll have the chance to prove that as well too. I don't think anyone would doubt that really if he's able to come through that big fight against Tyson Fury. Just joined. Big up everyone in the chat. Good to see you in here. iBoxing Hub. Did the council do that trim, mate? Enough Josh bashing for now. We'll leave that out of the way. Salute everyone indeed. All hail our Lord and Savior, Isaac Lowe.
Yes.
Canelo will cherry pick and fight Berlanga next, potentially. Hit the like button, maybe reunite him with Eddie Hearn there. How many fights was this now with? I'm not sure what the case is actually with Canelo. He's been with the PBC as well too. We don't know where he is, but that was a golden boy promotion anyway.
He's not signed to. Is he signed to PBC?
I think that's gone out the window. So yeah, remains to be seen as to what direction Canelo goes in. We're upcoming boxing channel inspired by you guys. Hope we can come on the show one day. Sure, we haven't quite had guests just yet. It's something that me and Danny have discussed. So stay tuned for that. I'll definitely ask Danny about getting guests and people on here in the chat. Might have to keep Ricky Gravel away from here as well too, because he's sometimes a little bit unpredictable. But if Ricky can be well behaved, then we might get Ricky on as well too. I know the likes of Danny Garfino might want to come on as well in the future. But yeah, if we have guests, very much welcome to have other people on as well. But stay tuned for that. Beterbiev injured again. Sad to see. 39 torn up knee against a mover in Bivol. We will get to that. Don't worry. I'll hold your comments on there, Romani Mode XD, for that portion of the chat. Big up, boys. Big up, Big Chungers. We're a big fan of Big Chungers here at Seconds Out. That's for sure. Will be the opportunity, but would have been a perfect opportunity for you, David, to step in and fight Bivol. David is in David Benavidez. Is that what you mean? Not sure what they're going on about there in the chat there, but we'll hold that for another date and another time. But yeah, we'll make to see what Inoue's movements are. But we do know the movements of one Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol. That little bit kind of overlooked fight because of the occasion being the 5v5 matchroom versus Queensbury, Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren going at it with their respective promotions. Kind of took the shine off a little bit of a fight that we've been waiting for years and years and years. That now with the Saudi intervention, as it was unboxing, they were able to get the fight over the line. Unfortunately, Beterbiev hasn't been able to make it over the line and fallen short on making the June 1st date, as he has, I believe, torn his meniscus. I believe that's an injury to the knee in training, which is very much a big shame and might change him as a fighter. Now, I'm not an expert in this area, but I do remember big wrestling fan, or at least not as big as I used to be. But some of your favorite wrestlers that you might think of have had these type of knee injuries, and they've had to change how they wrestle. They had to change how active they've been. They had to change how they care for themselves too. And I think you see these types of injuries in football. And although with modern medicine, or at least with modern surgery as well, too, changing and nursing and the physio side of things, you're able to probably get back to, or at least get as close as you can get back to what you were naturally as with your natural knee. The surgical improvements and how we've kind of gone forward with that have meant that you can kind of retain what you had beforehand. But I still think this is the type of injury at his age that's going to change him as a fighter, and it might change the outcome too, because as well you've got to factor in if they're looking to push this to an arranged September date, I think it was rumored as, or looking to get the ball rolling to get this fight on as soon as possible. How much is he going to be able to train for that fight with Bivol with the knee, and how much of his strength is he going to be able to retain? Josh, I don't know if you remember. I think when we saw this clip of, it was a couple of months back, I think it was, when Tyrone Mings, who's an Aston Villa defender, coming back from injury. I don't know if you saw the clip, Josh.
I think I know exactly what clip you're on
And
about.
he's sort of doing like this movement on, I don't know what it is. He's doing some sort of physio, but you can see the difference in his one leg, which is a big muscly leg, and then the other leg where he's obviously had the injury, and I think they call it atrophy. The amount of difference in the muscle between the two of them was so visible, and I worry about that for Beterbiev, because he's a big, strong guy who's now going to have to recover from the injury, mean that he can't train as much, so mean that one of the biggest traits of Beterbiev is his power. A lot of that comes from down below. A lot comes from setting your feet and your foundations. How much is that going to affect him on that sense, being able to hunt down his opponent because he's compromised in some way of having to recover from this injury? And that's the real worry. And with Bivol in the other corner, the sway was starting to go towards Bivol, given how destructive Beterbiev has been in this recent fights. I think this really does swing the favor back all the way back to Bivol. Do you feel the same way, Josh?
I definitely favour Bivol much more now after obviously after the injury, and especially when you look into the extent of what the injury can be. It's not a pretty injury. It's not one that we'll sit down and we'll give it 3 months. It's going to be 3 months until he can train again if the injury is as severe as what we're understanding it to be, which also then delays the fight massively. And Beterbiev isn't getting any younger. That's the fact. No one gets any younger. He's getting older, and I think this is a sign that are the training camps possibly becoming a little bit too hard for him. He might just not be able to actually push himself as hard as what he's been able to. He's been in boxing for a long time. He's probably dedicated his whole life to this sport, which is why he's been able to go on for as long as he has. You know, he's like we said, he's not young. He's what? Is he 39, 40? I think 39. But when you're in there, and you got to think, if he's coming into the fight off like recovering from a leg injury against a man who moves like Bivol, who's so unique in the way he moves. I've never seen a light heavyweight move the way Bivol moves. Again, it's kind of like when I was talking about Canelo facing Bivol. Stylistically, it could become a nightmare. Obviously, it's still a lot closer because we know that Beterbiev does contain that power that can put you out or change the fight at any moment. But the injury definitely adds it's threw a spanner in the works, not just for the actual fight itself. And we're so lucky that we've got a great undercard on. Otherwise, that'd be another card postponed. But I really do think this injury is going to favour Bivol massively.
Okay, appreciate that. I think Michael Owen might have had meniscus problems throughout his career. That could tell his career, changed his career. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was the case. Who else has had one? Luis Suarez. I think Suarez, although he had a real quick turnaround from his surgery off the back of that. So I think, like I was saying, maybe with modern surgery, it's not as bad as it used to be or could have been, but we don't know what the extent of the situation is with Beterbiev. We just know that he's had that injury. It could be something that, all these are all personal and individual. It could be not as big of a problem as we might make it out to be, but it's still very much a worry, and it's still something that I I I on the face of it would really kind of swing the pendulum all the way over to Dmitry Bivol in the fight if it does end up getting made. I believe that now in the picture it's been decided as to who takes his place now, and it's not going to be Joshua Buatsi. It's not going to be um, Anthony Yard either. It's interesting though that it wasn't Anthony Yard actually because he's waiting for an opportunity. I guess that Anthony Yard is sitting on the sidelines until um, his promotional situation has been sorted. Dmitry Bivol will be taking on Malik Zinad on that card, so he still gets the opportunity to get out in the ring. Zinad getting a good victory recently to get himself and set himself up for the opportunity, I guess, for a quick turnaround. So he gets that moment to try and upset the odds there, but it won't be Bivol for now, which very much is a shame for now. Let's get to some of the comments in the chat about this. I missed one specifically for this, and that was Ramoni Mode XD's. I favored Beterbiev for the June date, but with a knee injury against the mover at this old, I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure either. Ramoni Mode XD. Even if Benavidez is fighting Gvodzik, good fight for. I probably still favor Benavidez now, although Gvodzik is very much a natural light heavyweight. I think he's a little bit older now. I think he's had inactivity as well too. Benavidez is probably the favorite in the fight for me. Even if Naoya Inoue moves up to featherweight, he can easily dominate the weight class, except for this one fighter, Brandon Figueroa. Paul Beterbiev would have turned pro as a footballer if not for this injury. Join the club, brother Artur. Canelo says he wants 200 million, but I already did my work, David Benavidez. Beterbiev going to come back with wilder chicken legs. It's over for him, sadly. It's a big worry for Artur Beterbiev. Look, his boxing skills are brilliant as well too. We can't overlook that for the power that he brings to the table as well. But you're up against a real good boxer too, and that power is probably the real big edge that you had. And if that goes, big problem. Why did Beterbiev stay so long in the amateurs? All it does is wear your body out, and no one remembers them accomplishments. I bet he feels like he didn't wish he didn't stay too long now. Red Black Titchy. Funny that people talk about the age of Canelo's decline while Beterbiev is 39, Usyk is 37. Different divisions, specifically with Usyk and cruiserweight and heavyweight. The heavyweights especially tend to go on with history. Beterbiev a point there as well too. But Beterbiev, I guess with Beterbiev, the levels as well between Bivol and Beterbiev and then everyone else is what's kept him so long in that division and long in his career. Canelo and his decline, they're at real marquee weights, welterweights, middleweights, super middle, not so much, but in recent years and stuff, those have been the big high profile weights and the weights where there's been a lot of that top talent in there compared to the other ones. Reminds me of Triple G situation of him staying too long in amateurs and out of prime soon enough when it came to the big fights. Real tear in my eye about the Triple G situation. Let's not talk about him too much. Everyone ages differently though, and some have more wear and tear. Completely accept that point. After 33, every fighter is in decline. Oh, I've got 1 year before I hit 33, Josh. I hope I'm not. How old are you, Josh?
I've just turned 18. I'm
Oh,
not even been 18 for 3 months. So yeah.
mate,
Sorry to throw that on you.
yeah, savor these years, savor the youth, because I'm 33 and I'm going to be in decline. Says Red Black Titchy, although I'm not a fighter, I guess. Just a civilian in decline. You're too busy pissing about on the sidelines whilst the rare Saudi paydays and big domestic deals pass him by. There's a real danger of that. He wants to sort out his promotional situation, I believe it is, first before he steps back in the ring. And Frank believes that he's got a contractual position where he's still promoting him. Yard side must believe that they don't, and that could end in legals, which then look what happened with Andre Ward. Look what happened with loads of fighters who've had these promotional issues, and it's kept them on the sidelines for so long. Yard for me is someone who's capable of winning a world title, capable of crossing over into the mainstream as well. Too real advocate for his area and the good, a real ambassador for good as well. A real good talker too. A really kind of want to see Yard do well and have another big night, have another big opportunity, really seize his moment. But moments like this, we don't know what the situation is behind this, behind the scenes of it all. But I really do hope that his career doesn't suffer because of this. But things like this do take time to come up to a conclusion where everyone is happy. Marcelo Nascimento, did Canelo say he saw both Oscar and Steve Bunce in a room with? I should have uh, screened that before I read it. Running mode XD, Yard Bivol would have been an amazing as a replacement. I completely agree with you there. Seems him and Frank haven't reached a compromise yet. Unfortunately, though, according to the latest interviews, yep, it feels the same. Well, Ayman, you'll be collecting your pension soon. Although I thought Flexen was the old man of the pod. I think Danny's in his 40s. I'm 32. So yeah, I'm definitely feeling the age, grieving the youth as well. When you've got someone like Josh on the opposite side of the stream, you definitely feel old. Although I have been keeping up with, I think everyone who's hip these days is keeping up with the Drake and Kendrick beef. Are you watching that one, Josh?
I actually haven't. No, I've not really been. I don't really listen to Drake or Kendrick really, so I've not been keeping up. I can go do some research after this, possibly. I've seen the odd bit about it, but I'm just not very aware of what's going on, if I'm being truly honest.
Fair enough, no worries. Well, as that battle rumbles on, we move forward to Tank Davis, who's in against Frank Martin soon. Javante Davis has been doing some of the media rounds. He's been appearing more so on some of the interviews and on some of the channels, and he's had some choice words for people specifically for Eddie Hearn, who he's called a snake in a suit. He's made some allegations about Eddie Hearn as to not being able to trust him, doesn't want to work with him. He would fancy a Conor Benn fight if, as he says, Conor Benn was away from alleged PED usage, but he wouldn't fight him on an Eddie Hearn show because he couldn't trust him. Let's get into that. What do you think about Tank Davis's shots at people, specifically Eddie Hearn finding himself in the firing line?
To be honest, I can understand why he's doing it, but the thing that I don't get is that he'll put all these tweets up and then a couple hours later they're nowhere to be seen. But it just seems like it's not very friendly, and it's not going to end well, especially if he's talking about wanting to fight Conor Benn. You've got to go through Eddie Hearn to make that fight. If you're sat there tweeting away day in, day out, giving Eddie Hearn stick, you're not going to get that fight. I'm not saying that's going to be the end of Tank's career if he's not going to get that fight, because there's there's plenty of fights for him to get out there. But it definitely seems like a little bit hostile. I don't think he's done his research by saying that Eddie Hearn's behind the Ryan Garcia failed drug test. I feel like he might need to just have a little what's the word? Just have a little search about who actually promotes Ryan Garcia. but yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting when we're the ones just sitting back watching it. I don't think I'd like to be tweeting back and forth with Gervonta and then have him threaten to knock my head off. But Eddie Hearn then clapped back pretty respectively and said with a step ladder. A few personal shots there, I'd say. But no, it's certainly interesting to see what's going on. Eddie Hearn's obviously mentioned that he could take him to court and sue him, but he said he couldn't be bothered. So, yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very intriguing as well. Too intriguing that Eddie Hearn couldn't be bothered to do that. I'm not sure as to what the reasons are for that. But putting that thought to aside for the moment, let's talk about the boxing action. He's up against Frank Martin. Do you favor him in that fight, Josh? And looking at some of the rivals in the division as well, the likes of Lomachenko, who's still around, the likes of William Zepeda, who looked very impressive dispatching British boxing favorite Maxie Hughes in his last fight, the likes of Keyshawn Davis, the likes of Andy Cruz, Shakur Stevenson. Would you put him as the top of the pack there in the lightweight division if Gervonta Tank Davis was to take on all those mentioned names?
That is a tough one. That is a very, very tough one. He'd definitely be very close to the top, but I feel he'd get the better of a lot of those fights, especially with the stage some of the fighters are at in their career. Um, like when you mentioned the likes of Andy Cruz and Keyshawn Davis, they're still very fresh to this pro game. But when you start mentioning the likes of Lomachenko, obviously I've heard Lomachenko's in action this weekend, isn't he, against Kambosos?
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I feel like I'd be able to make a better judgment as to whether Gervonta Davis gets the better of Lomachenko based on what we see this weekend. Shakur Stevenson, I think haven't they had their back and forth, Gervonta and Shakur? Again, they don't seem to like each other very much. That's a tough. I slightly favour Shakur, which is a rogue option, as I'm sure I'm probably going to get a little few shouts in the chat now for saying that. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Gervonta pulled it off because he seems to find a way in fights where he is down and he's up against it to find the finish, which is what he's so good at. I feel like he gives them all a good fight. But when it's coming down to is he at the top, I'm not sure because there's some very, very good operators in that weight class as well, who could very well have the right game plan, the right approach to break down Gervonta Davis, and whether it's beat him on points or stop him, it doesn't matter. If they get the job done, they get the job done, and I think there are some elite fighters in that weight class that could definitely do that.
Well, Shahir, what do you think of the Kambosos and Lomachenko fight?
I favour Lomachenko heavily. I've not been impressed with Kambosos as of late, especially after the Maxie Hughes fight last year. I find it very hard for people to even believe Kambosos has a chance. And that's no disrespect to him because at the end of the day, he was undisputed at one point when he beat Teofimo Lopez, but he didn't look great against Haney, which is it's hard to look good against Haney at times because of how elite he is. But Ryan Garcia did that a couple of weeks ago, so it shows it is possible. But I do think Lomachenko beats him. I reckon he could break him down to a stoppage. But if not, I reckon a very wide points win.
Not quite undisputed as it was franchise champion, wasn't it? But you're our franchise champion here at Seconds Out, Josh. Don't you worry. If we give out a franchise championship, you definitely have that here. Yeah, no, good fight there over in Australia, isn't it, for Lomachenko? Good bounce back potential win for him here, and I think it's likely to be the case. A lot of people kind of feel that Lomachenko did beat Devin Haney, and I think this will show for a lot of people if Lomachenko is still competitive at that top level. And I think he will completely prove that as he's got older, as he's also declined that little bit as well, too, that he still can be competitive in that division. And I think he'll beat and potentially stop George Kambosos, who I think he's just picking up those last few paydays as he can off the back of what was an amazing victory against Teofimo Lopez, just rivals that were made for each other with that delay as well, too, that led to the eventual fight and the way he was able to get into Teofimo Lopez's mind to help set up the victory for him. I don't think there'll be any art of war plays here for George Kambosos against Vasyl Lomachenko, but Lomachenko's definitely got something out there to prove in amongst what should be a big, large Australian audience. I think he'll want to show to the division as well too, that he's won't want to leave it in any judge's hands and want to go for the stoppage here. And I think he probably will get it against a very game George Kambosos. Good fighter though, nonetheless, is George. For me, Gervonta Davis and those names. Look, Ryan Garcia was saying like he doesn't think that that Gervonta Davis will get through Frank Martin. I think he will. And I think he probably. I don't think it'll be vintage Gervonta Davis by any means, but I think he will get the victory against Frank Martin. And we look to kind of hopefully set up those big fights for Tank Davis in the division. I feel like he needs another one of those off the back of the Rolly fight was a real good occasion. And for someone of Gervonta Davis's stature, I don't mean stature in terms of height, I mean stature in terms of how big he is in the game. I remember some of the numbers working for previous companies I had before, some of the numbers Gervonta Davis used to do on fight weeks and fight nights were astronomical. And he is one of those really that if he can get it right, if he can keep some of that, if he can get, he was saying that, he spent time at the limelight, he spent time in jail, and he's come out now and he's looking to keep focused on his career. If he can really curtail some of the rubbish, really, and the people, the hangers on and stuff, get out of the wrong crowd, get out of doing some of the wrong things that he's been doing and focus on his career, he could really be that guy who Floyd Mayweather has attached himself to a degree to Gervonta Davis, and for good reason, because I think Floyd sees him as that next guy off Canelo when he eventually moves out of the picture. It'll be the Davis show. Shakur Stevenson will have something to say about that. Ryan Garcia will have something to say about that. But from what I've seen, and I remember as well too, Garcia did ridiculous and has done as well too, working at Seconds Out, ridiculous numbers. But those Tank Davis numbers were huge. He's just got to make sure he's got everything else out in the picture, out the way, so that you can focus on those moments and those big fights, whether it be a Conor Ben, whether it be a Zepeda, whether it be Lomachenko, whatever it is. And you probably favor him now against Lomachenko as well too, another dazzling fighter, but just getting on in age now and hasn't really been. I know been against. I don't want to say he's not been against big punchers as he has done, but I think it's more the weight has been a bigger factor for Lomachenko to look out for. But Davis is that big puncher, and there could be that real, not a passing of the torch moment, but that real kind of highlight real moment for Davis there if he looks to take on the winner of Kambosos and Lomachenko, which I believe to be Lomachenko. But yeah, some big nights and big futures for big possible future paydays, I should say, for Davis. He's got to as well hurry a little bit because not so much Keyshawn Davis and Andy Cruz are real good fighters, but Andy Cruz as well too looks incredible. The way he dispatched of again, I don't know why the names are jumping out of my head. Max Hughes' former opponent, the Mexican. Can you remember his name, Josh?
Wait, say again.
Giovanni Straffon.
That's it. Yes.
The way he dispatched a Straffon was unreal. He looks every bit of a fighter who can transition well into the pro game. Roberto Ramirez, I remember he had a brilliant amateur career, didn't quite transition over as well. Just stuttered, didn't he, in his first fight? Lomachenko had a bit of a stutter as well too in his few fights as he looked to establish himself in the pro game. But Andy Cruz has taken to it brilliantly, and that can be a real worry because he's very much sprinting all the way to the top. And I think Gervonta Davis probably want to get his business done in division and move forward, get those big nights against Shakur and the others. Again, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Lomachenko before Andy Cruz factors his way into the picture. But we're going to close out very shortly. I'll get one final look at the comments before we jump out of the way and let you enjoy the rest of your bank holiday Monday. Let's get into the comments here. It says here, Drake is a Disney star, child turned rapper. Can't take that mug seriously. Kendrick clears him easily. I think he does. I think Romano Modex G said, don't talk about the joke rappers. To be fair, my favorite rappers are Killer Mike, and I do enjoy LP as well too. So I'll give you an idea of what sort of rap I'm into. More into the rock scene these days as well. So looking forward to going to some rock festivals soon. So rap isn't quite in my picture at the moment. Moving on, Hearn doesn't care. Tank is a huge name. Any PR for Eddie is good PR. when cracking the Yank market. Good point. Don't think being called a snake in a suit is the best of PRs, but I get what you're saying there. Anyways, DB Cooper, point taken. Gervonta has been outpointed before heavily against Romero and Barrios before he got the KO. If Frank has a good chin, it's possible to win, though I favor Gervonta. My counterpoint to that, and whilst you're right, he was looking for that. He was setting up that one punch knockout. He got that against Romero. Barrios's face was a mess, if I remember, after that fight. So I think he was setting up that finish as well too. Barrios looked terrible after that fight. Tank is playing the game and selling pay-per-view. You can't be a true mass casual star without being a clown, e.g. C. Crawford. Fair point. Agree with Josh. Shakura is a serious talent who yanks right off because of his last fight and social media antics. The industry knows he's the real deal. You'll see Showbiz lose his mind. Game over. I don't know who Showbiz is. Josh, do you know who Showbiz is? That your nickname? Showbiz Josh Hart?
From what I'm aware, that's not my nickname. I've got no clue what that's about, and that's not even one of the random ones that I was warning you about either. I've got no clue what that is.
Yeah. Fill in the gaps for us, Hayden Brown. I do not know who Showbiz is. Inoue versus Cambosis is a dream, but it will never happen. I agree. I don't think that'll happen either. Why? I would favor Cambosis because of how big he is in stature-wise, but there's no storyline to a fight between them. Agreed. Can't have been a big fight for Tank. I'm going to pull the other one, Ayman. I've got to pull you, Josh, apparently, here. I, to be fair, agree with DB Cooper one here. I don't think it's in Tank's sight, really. But I think you might want to get one over Eddie Hearn there, potentially, just to make a point there. There was rumors, though, Josh and DB Cooper one, if we remember, the start of the year or towards the first couple of months of the year, that Gervonta Davis was going to fight in the UK. Those have all
Yes.
subsided very quickly, haven't they? And those have all gone dead quiet. I would have loved to have seen any of the, I don't know if I missed it, but I would have loved to have seen any of the people that got a chance to interview Davis this week and ask him what fight was that going to be fighting in the UK, because I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was a potential Conor Benn fight.
It would have been interesting, definitely. It would have been very interesting if that was to happen.
Ayman the Emo Khan didn't quite have that nickname growing up, but yeah, into that sort of music right now. I definitely want to go to the gym. Time to wrap up, lads. Josh needs to go into town to. I won't mention the rest of that. We are definitely though wrapping up. Josh, even though you've had a couple of comments here, you've been stellar nonetheless. Been good to have you here in the Seconds Out Live once again. Done a fine job, Josh. We'll give you the last word as well too. But whilst you're thinking of that last word, I'd like to thank everyone here in the chat for joining in. Make sure you're in the coming weeks as well too, because we've got some big fights to discuss. Big fights coming up as well, in the form of, we'll be discussing, of course, Loma and Cambosis. We've got Fury and Usyk to look forward to. We've got many other fights to look forward to. I'm not going to list them all, but we're very much ramping up towards those big fights. I will be out and about this week as well. We have Bentley versus Dignam this week, so I'm sure we'll get some time with Frank. And there'll be a couple of press conferences as well too to attend. So make sure you keep tuned into Seconds Out for the latest boxing content we've got coming your way. Make sure if you haven't already, click the like button, subscribe button. Really much appreciate your support. Hopefully we'll see Danny flexing as well back in the seat too as well next weekend. But the final word with you, Josh, what would you like to say to sign us out of this edition's Seconds Out Live?
I'd like to say thank you for everyone who's tuned in again, everyone who's interacted in the chat, but maybe not as big of a thank you to the people who've been ripping into me, whether it's to do with my haircut or anything else, especially that last comment towards me. I would never do such things like that. But no, thank everyone for tuning in. Make sure to stick around, like we said, next week, massive week, Fury Usyk, some very, very big lives coming up to break down some very big fights. And hopefully I'm back again soon. You'll see me again in June, possibly.
Good stuff.